In this second video on the keypad and pick encoder, well, I say here 7-second display, but I'm not really going to display it at this stage on the 7-second display. But my whole purpose is to determine the output from the keypad encoder combination so that I can eventually correct it. So the whole purpose in this video is just get what is pressed and also then what is received, and put that in maybe an Excel spreadsheet, and I'll explain why I'm doing that. So if we go to, again, I've got exactly the same Proteus design here. Like I say, I'm not really using, at this stage, I'm not going to display it on the 7-segment displays, but I will in the next video, I will do that. So what I'm actually going to do is just to start by pressing, for instance, a 0, and you'll see if I press a 0, you can see the output here from this pick encoder, and you will also see it, of course, on the LEDs here. So this program of my ATmega is just taking that value and placing it on port C as outputs on the LED. So as you can see here in this specific case, this value is a value of 2R0, RA0 in this case here is the least significant output bit. So this is a 2, and if I look at what we have here, it's also a 2. So if I press the 0, it's actually displaying a 2. If I press a 1, it's actually displaying, I can have a look there, but also look at the LEDs, it's displaying 15, and so forth. So what my whole purpose is, I'm just going to capture these values. So my whole aim is the following. If I press, for instance, an 8, and I receive a 5, you can look at this one here, this is the 5 that I receive. So I press an 8 and I receive a 5. If I can place this 5 in an array as element, if I can place the value of 8, which I pressed, into an array with element number 5, that will actually solve my problem. I can use that to my advantage and actually determine, or whatever I press can be corrected then. So element number 5, what I get here will eventually land up in an element number, and of course what will be in that element of the array will be the number that I've pressed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly draw up a table. So if I press a 0, you'll see I've got a 2, and if I press a 1, I've got a 15, and I've already drawn this up on a table in Excel. So here I say this was what was pressed. Let me just make this a little bit bigger. This was what was pressed. If I press a 0, I received a 2. If I press a 1, I get a 15, and so forth. If I go back here, if I press a 2, I get 0. If I press a 3, I get 14. 0, 14 will be the following ones, 0, 14, and so forth. So that's the way I will go with this thing. I will actually check then what is happening here. Let me push 3 at a specific time. So if I press 4 there, I'm getting a value of 7, 8, 9. So that's what I'm going to do on my table, is I'm going to place 7, 8, 9. This is what I've received. If I press a 7, what do I get? If I press 7, I get a value of 4, 5, 6, and I'll fill that in. 4, 5, 6. If I press an A, but I'm actually, well, if I press an A, it means I want to receive a 10. So I can actually also say I've pressed a 10. So let's look at that. What is the output then if I start pressing A? I get a value of 13, 12, 11, and 10. 13, 12, 11, 10. And if I press my star here, I'm actually pressing a 14, but I'm receiving a 1. And if I press a hash, I'm receiving a 3. And I'll just fill those things in, 1 and 3. So what I've done then, is I've got a column here pressed, and I've got this column here received. So what I'm actually going to do is just rewrite a received column, but now I'm starting from 0 to 15. And then I will just compare this received column here with this one here, because received, but when I received a 0, it's actually this one here. What was pressed? A 2 was pressed. So I'm just going to, on that 0, I'm just looking at, from this received, I looked at that receive, and I see a 2 was pressed, and I fill in a 2 here. If I look at the 1 here, on my column here, it's 14 that was pressed, which is this one here. And that's the way, if I received a 2, I'll just go to my column of 2, a 0 was pressed, and this is why I put a 0 in here. So you just complete this table by just looking at, it's actually exactly the same table. All you have to do is just rearrange it. And eventually what I will do then is I will place this first one, value, which was pressed, in element 0 of my array. And that one, 14, I'll place in element number 1. So let me just go back. Remember what I've said. If I press an 8, this is what was pressed. This is the real value that I want to see at the end of the day. I receive a 5. This is actually what I receive. And this is going to be my element. So if I go to my Excel spreadsheet now, and I go to element number 5, which is this one, as you can see, pressed, I pressed an 8, and that now sits in element number 5. And this is then extremely easy to go from here to actually correct what was received from the keypad. So if I can just quickly go through the program, let me have a look at the program quickly, but it's very similar to what I've done before. What I'm first going to do is just scroll through the whole program so that you can actually see the whole program. There it is. And I say, if you press a key, capture what you've pressed and what was received, and display the received value on port C. Well, although I say here for as long as the key is pressed, I actually change the program. It's just this, it will display it. Well, it will display it on port C permanently until a new key is pressed. But if I look at my program, again, I can actually remove this delay because I'm not making use of a delay. I'm definitely making use of the interrupts here. This is very similar to my video number 1, the previous video number 1. So you can look at video number 1, why I've done all of these things. But this is the way I've set up this whole program. And in my interrupt service routine, if the key is pressed, I know the program will jump in here, and buffer will actually contain pin D or port D value, which port D, I've specified port D as an input, and buffer will take pin D, and we know as from video number 1, it is shifted to the upper nibble is shifted to the lower nibble position. And now I'm just pushing this out on port C. And this is why what you see on port C was actually what we get from the keypad encoder combination. And yes, this is whatever I press here is actually received and displayed on port C here. So at this stage, I have actually determined this is my elements in the array, and I have determined what will be sitting inside those different element positions. This will be the content of my array. In my next video, I'm going to use this specific values here in an array to do the final correction of this specific arrangement. That's the end of this video. Thank you.